Here we go.
I begin with the comment from YouTube, from Trey Jackson 240, who says, Skip, thank you for shifting to YouTube because your opinion is of much value. Trey, honored by this. I hope you find the opinions I'm about to unleash of much value. So I told you last week why I would take Shedeur Sanders #1 overall in the draft and why Colorado as a 15.5-point underdog at UCF was laughable. And Shedeur and company went right out and hung 48 on UCF and won 48-21. Way to go, Dion. Then Saturday night, of course, Jalen Milroe certainly made his case to go very high in the draft by throwing for 374 yards and running for another 117 as Alabama held off Georgia 41-34. Jalen Milroe plays even bigger than his listed height and weight of 6'2", 225 pounds. And now second to Jalen Milroe in the Heisman odds is Miami's Cam Ward. So what do Shedeur and Jalen Milroe and Cam Ward have in common? Something that doesn't get much attention anymore because it's so commonplace, so normal, so just the way it is now. They're the next tidal wave of black quarterbacks. The tidal wave that almost certainly will make black quarterbacks the majority in the National Football League. Man, oh man, if you went through what I once went through, this is unimaginably, impossibly great. I once found myself right in the middle of the two situations that screamed the NFL didn't really want a single black starting quarterback. The two situations that are featured in episode 1 of Michael Vick's new Amazon Prime documentary, The Evolution of the Black Quarterback, which I highly recommend. Michael Vick's interviews are captivating. But here's the bigger point. Seriously, the way this is evolving in, let's say 10 years from now, you'll see a documentary entitled, Whatever Happened to the White Quarterback? Right now, 15 of 32 teams, NFL teams, 15 of 32 have starting quarterbacks who are black. Now, that counts Carolina, which did take Bryce Young #1 overall, obviously 2 years back. And Bryce Young will get another chance to succeed there, and I believe he will. That means there are now 16 starting white quarterbacks, and Tua is Samoan. So 15 black starters at quarterback, 16 white, and we're not sure what Tua's future holds with his concussion issues, of course. And here comes Shedeur and Jalen Milroe and Cam Ward. 2 drafts ago, you'll remember, black quarterbacks went 1-2 in the draft for the first time ever. Then Anthony Richardson, of course, went 4th. The rookie revelation of that class was the #2 overall pick, C.J. Stroud, who was so good for the Texans, he entered into the late season MVP debate. So far this season, #1 overall pick, Caleb Williams. I'm a big fan, has had his spectacular moments, but once again, the #2 pick overall, Jayden Daniels, has been the rookie revelation. He's leading the NFL in completion percentage at 82% through 4 games. That's while averaging 55 yards rushing a game at 6 feet 4 inches tall. Ladies and gentlemen, Jayden Daniels, let me start that over. Jayden Daniels is off to the most spectacular start of any rookie quarterback in NFL history. I'm going to say that again. Jayden Daniels is off to the most spectacular start of any quarterback in NFL history. He already looks like he could be even a little better than C.J. Stroud because of his legs. And if the revitalized Commanders are as good as I fear they are, Jayden Daniels will rise right by Offensive Rookie of the Year, right into the middle of the MVP debate. Jayden, CJ, Caleb are, of course, black quarterbacks. For years and years and years, I pounded on the table for the NFL to at least give black quarterbacks a chance, just a chance. So now it's only right. I applaud the NFL for swinging its doors wide open for black quarterbacks. But of course, you know what happened. Once teams started winning with black quarterbacks, with a Patrick Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson, who could pick you to pieces from the pocket, as well as drive you crazy trying to defend their scrambles, their called runs. Once we saw two black quarterbacks competing against each other for the first time ever in a Super Bowl, Mahomes versus Jalen Hurts 2 years ago, well, maybe even NFL owners who came from racist backgrounds thought, I want me one of those. So I'm not saying every NFL owner and or GM that has a starting black quarterback is doing this for the right enlightened reason, but at least this league is no longer disqualifying black college quarterbacks for the wrong reasons. So the point is, I certainly no longer have any reason to feel sorry for black quarterbacks who no longer have a plight to fight. This battle is over. Have they ever arrived? But did they ever have an impossible plight to fight when I first got involved? What were the odds? I'd be raised pretty much by a black woman named Katie Bell Henderson in Oklahoma City. Story I've told you recently. Then at age 26, I'd wind up writing deeply about arguably the two most storied plights in black quarterback history. I mean, I look back on all of the above as a God thing. By the way, in case you hadn't noticed yet, I'm white. But in the fall of 1977, I convinced my editors at the Los Angeles Times out here in LA to send me for a week, an entire week, to Grambling, Louisiana, because it sure looked like the Grambling quarterback was going to be the first pick in the NFL draft. Now, Grambling, of course, was an historically black university, and even though Grambling did in those days have a couple of white players, their quarterback named Doug Williams definitely was not white. So think about this. A black quarterback going number one overall in the NFL draft in 1977 would have been revolutionary news. Nobody had written much about it. I decided I was. So I flew to, as they call it, Monroe, Louisiana, rented a car, drove over to Grambling, and I then had the pleasure of spending several days with two of the finest men I've ever had the pleasure of getting to know. Yeah, you're right. They welcomed me because I was a white reporter from a big city newspaper who had gone way out of his way to come all the way to tiny little Grambling to write about its star black quarterback. But the first man I met was, to me, the greatest coach in college football history. That man was Eddie Robinson, Coach Rob, the ultimate maker of men. Eddie Robinson lived by the Bible. And did he ever practice what he preached? I spent a lot of time around Coach Rob that week, enough to detect if he had any flim-flam in him, not a drop. No anti-white in him that I could feel, though he certainly deserved to have plenty of anti-white, having grown up in the deep South in those days. I even flew with Coach Rob to Houston, where he spoke to the media to promote an upcoming game at the Astrodome against Texas Southern. Then later that season, when I was back in LA, I asked my sports editor if I could write an opinion, like just an opinion piece, pushing the Rams to hire Eddie Robinson to replace Chuck Knox, who was then leaving for Buffalo. Story I broke. No, I was told by my editors I was too young to write an opinion. But you know what? There may have been more to that. The quote-unquote modern NFL of that era wasn't yet ready for a black head coach. At least that was the vibe I got. So, would you believe I watched Joe Namath's last NFL game with Coach Rob in his living room in Grambling. That was a Monday night game. Joe went 16 of 40, threw 4 interceptions, as the Rams that I covered lost that game, that Monday night game at Chicago. Now, I'd gotten to know Broadway Joe, liked him a lot, but he did have his faults. He did like to have a good time, and he did have a wild streak. So, next day, I met Doug Williams. Even went back and hung out with him in his dorm room. Not a drop of Broadway Joe in Doug Williams, though he definitely was big man on campus at 6'4" by 225 pounds. But trust me, what a fine young man Doug Williams was. Such a high competitive character, such a serious-minded, upstanding leader of that team that would go 10-1. Yet, here was the irony. Black quarterbacks had a reputation for being able to run much better than they could throw. Doug Williams was a pure drop-back passer, a pocket passer who rarely ran. What he had was a huge, accurate arm with touch, just like star white quarterbacks of that era. So I'm thinking, wait till NFL fans get an eyeful of this. Then I fatefully called a prominent NFL GM I'd gotten to know, who pretty much tried to talk me out of Doug Williams for my own good, as if the GM was trying to save me from embarrassing myself. The GM told me that Doug Williams, and I quote, just doesn't have the mental capacity to play our game. Of course, he asked me not to quote him by name in my story, so I did use that quote as an anonymous quote, a quote that set the tone for much of what Doug Williams was about to go through. That was the biggest racist knock on black quarterbacks in those days. Couldn't process complicated NFL offenses, couldn't speed read complicated NFL defenses. But you also heard from white executives that they just weren't, these black quarterbacks, they just weren't qualified to be the team leader and the face of the franchise. Maybe because white men in charge just weren't ready to have black men in charge. My last day at Grambling, as practice ended, Eddie Robinson shocked me by asking me without warning to speak to the team and to tell his players how I had risen so quickly in my business. I'm sure I babbled some cliches about outworking my competition, but nothing I could have said that day could have prepared Doug Williams for what was about to happen. Doug Williams fell to 17th in the first round to Tampa Bay. Now, the Bucs were the NFL's worst team the previous season, 2-12, but they traded the first overall pick to Houston, which did take Earl Campbell, great pick. But all the way down at 17, Doug Williams didn't even get to go to a decent team. He went to the worst team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Somehow Doug Williams went 34-33 in 5 seasons as Tampa's starter. That included 10-6 in the playoffs in his second season. Then he went to Washington. And you know the rest of the story. Doug Williams became the first black quarterback to ever win the Super Bowl. I covered that Super Bowl in San Diego. First thing I thought about when Doug Williams outplayed the Golden Boy, John Elway, was that anonymous quote from that GM. Years later, when I ran into Doug at ESPN, he thanked me for coming all the way to Grambling and writing about him. So, meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, I'd been covering a Rams team that featured the first black quarterback ever to start in the National Football League full-time, James Shaq Harris, former 8th-round draft pick by Buffalo out of, ready for this, Grambling. Yep, James also went to Grambling. James Harris was also shattering the mold. He rarely ran. Here was another 6'4", 215-pounder who did it the way the white quarterbacks did. He threw beautiful missiles from the pocket. Still, the world around James Harris made him feel like he was an alien. Even out here in enlightened LA, felt like an alien. I got to know him a little, felt how haunted and tortured he felt because of the color of his skin playing the position he played in the National Football League. Would you believe that James Harris went 21-6 over 3 seasons as the Rams starter? Yet he could have been so much better if he hadn't been so paranoid about losing his job, constantly looking over his shoulder, wondering what the white coaches and the white executives and the white owner were thinking. James later thanked me for having his back as he went through his quarterback hell out here in Hollywood. So if you took James Harris or Doug Williams and you dropped either of them into today's NFL, with black quarterbacks now the norm, Lord only knows how many Pro Bowls they'd make with their size and their arm strength and their accuracy. So did James Harris have the mental capacity? Would you believe both he and Doug Williams became successful NFL team-building executives? Both of them. Talk about mental capacity. If you want to hear their stories, just watch episode 1 of Michael Vick's new documentary. I recommend all 3 episodes, but definitely watch episode 1. Speaking of Michael Vick, I got to know him at Fox. And over time, I found Michael Vick to be a good man with a good heart. A man I forgave, even though I obviously will never be able to forget what he did to those dogs. As you probably know by now, I am a dog lover. I call our Maltese Hazel my daughter, and I treat her as such. Michael Vick is the first black quarterback to be taken number 1 overall in the draft, obviously damaged the rise of the black quarterback. Then he refueled it with his completely authentic redemption. I'm talking about redemption. It's ultimately fitting Michael Vick is presiding over this documentary. In the history of the National Football League, there has never been a more exciting player than the Michael Vick experience in his Atlanta days. Greatest broken field runner ever, with a shockingly strong arm for a comparatively small man at quarterback. On the field in Atlanta, Michael Vick was the most legendary NFL player ever. Now those physical gifts have been matched by his humility. Trust me on that. Now black quarterbacks have broken through and are on the verge of taking over the NFL. So actually, weirdly, Tom Brady was a mold breaker, an aberration, an extreme outlier, a pocket passer with good but not great velocity, but with deadly accuracy, a 6th rounder who beat you mostly with his mental capacity, his speed reading, his intangibles, dynamic leadership, psycho-competitive fire. Think about this. Aaron Rodgers was much greater back in the days when he could take off and run. Josh Allen can run. Joe Burrow is an underrated runner. Hey, the next Manning, Arch Manning, can run. An aging Matt Stafford, never been that fleet of foot, but he just might have had the most golden arm ever there was. Now Matt Stafford is a beat-up 36. The fight is over. By next year, black quarterbacks almost certainly will become the majority. And I, for one, find that blissfully surreal. From YouTube, this is KJack90, who says, we thanking teams that get swept? What's your agenda? Ask KJack90. Okay, KJack. That's now the problem with the WNBA. Everybody's got an agenda, or at least it seems like just about everybody thinks somebody's got an agenda. It's right there in your face, night after night after night, in black and white. And nearly every agenda revolves around Caitlin Clark, one WNBA star who I don't think has any agenda. I am sick and tired of all the WNBA's black-white agendas. I tried to love this league this year, but now I'm feeling a very strong quit-watching vibe. But back to KJack's question, yes, after the Indiana Fever lost 2 straight playoff games at Connecticut to get swept in a best 2-out-of-3 series, I did post a video thanking the Fever for taking me on such a great ride this season. I thank Caitlin, who is white, and I thank Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston, who are black. But I thank Caitlin first because she's obviously the biggest star on the team, even though Kelsey tied her in regular season scoring at 19.2 points per game. And even though Kelsey, as I often pointed out during the season, was a much better three-point shooter than Caitlin at 40%. But KJack, I thank them because after starting 1-8, night after night after night, that team played with such refuse-to-lose heart and guts. No lead was ever safe against that bunch. A year ago, they went 13-27. This season, they rose to 20-20 by beating New York and Connecticut and Seattle at home, and by winning at Minnesota, and by sweeping Phoenix. Yeah, KJack, I got the Fever. So in that closeout game 2 at Connecticut, Fever were down 9 going to the fourth quarter, and they fought all the way back to lead with 2:05 left in the game before they did lose by 6 because the Sun are just too veteran, deep, and tough mentally, physically. Fever just weren't ready for that. Still, I thought they deserved a round of applause, even though I guess, silly me, I did risk over-congratulating, over-hyping the new white superstar. Who knows? Maybe even I risked inspiring more racist internet hate aimed at black players. But the truth was, I was trying to congratulate all the Fever. Yet, KJack, would you believe I then did on X and on Threads exactly what I did all season long? I criticized the new white superstar. And I'm white. What was I thinking? Well, I was thinking she deserved every negative word I aimed at her. In those 2 playoff games at Connecticut, Caitlin Clark shot 5 of 25 from 3. That was awful. Heck, she was only 14 of 40 from the floor. That's 35%. That was awful. And she managed to shoot only 4 free throws in those 2 games. Won't work. The rookie white superstar was the biggest reason the Fever lost game 2 and didn't get the series back to Indiana for a deciding game 3. And I, for one, called her out on it. I repeatedly called out Caitlin Clark during the season for her turnovers. She shattered the WNBA's all-time single-season record for turnovers with 223. That's 86 more than the previous record worst. Think about that, 86 more. Mind-blowingly bad. I actually kept bringing that up when nobody else would. Me, the white guy, I brought it up and up and up. Again and again and again. I also never let Caitlin Clark off the hook for her three-point shooting. Yeah, she occasionally made logo threes, but she shot only 34.4%, which ranked 48th in the league. 48th. Meanwhile, she led the league in three-point attempts by 31 attempts. Talk about double jeopardy for the Fever. I kept pointing that out all season long because that's what I do when it's deserved, without agenda. And that criticism was definitely deserved. That's why I'd like to think I had some credibility when I began to say Caitlin Clark was already the best passer in the WNBA, a once-a-generation passer who dropped my jaw 2 or 3 times a night, just the way LeBron has, night after night for 21 seasons. Caitlin did lead the entire WNBA in assists by 20. I was captivated watching Caitlin Clark begin to control games with her orchestrating, her trick passing, and with her occasional hot streaks from on or near the logo, jump shooting, just wrist flicking threes in a way I'd never seen in the women's game. One reason she missed so much from three was because her degree of difficulty was the highest in the league. She was shooting the longest threes consistently. That also meant when she hit a couple, especially at home, they had more scoreboard impact than any shot made by any other star in the league, and that wasn't even close. These were Dame Dollar threes, Dame Dollar length threes. But of course, Caitlin's drawing power turned away games into home games. Was she drawing mostly white fans? I don't doubt that. But no matter the color, they counted at the turnstiles and in the ratings. Caitlin Clark put the WNBA on the national map. I know I'd never regularly watch WNBA games, but did I ever watch them this past season? Because, listen, Caitlin Clark has basketball genius, captivating genius. Silly me, I thought the Black Stars would, if not embrace her, at least welcome her, appreciate her, because her presence alone is going to make them a whole lot more money. They should all be thanking their lucky stars for Caitlin Clark. Instead, I watched her get bullied and roughed up. Okay, I'm thinking that's just part of rookie initiation. I thought, well, they're testing her limits, her backbone, seeing if the skinny white girl from Iowa will ever push back or if she'll just fold. She began to hold her own. She began to at least talk back. But man, that Kennedy Carter incident, it just really disgusted me. The more I think about it, the madder I get at myself for not unleashing on it at the moment. Kennedy Carter got a little running start before an inbounds pass and just rammed Caitlin Clark, knocked her to the floor. But what really got me was that Kennedy Carter yelled, "Bitch," just before she hit Caitlin Clark. That just felt racist to me, but what do I know? I'm just a white guy. Meanwhile, over on the bench, Angel Reese stood and applauded. Just disgusting. For the first half of the season, I pushed Angel Reese for Rookie of the Year because she did have a record double-double run. She was leading the league in rebounding and ultimately did by far. But, over the last month of the season, it became so clear to me she's just not the basketball player Caitlin Clark is. Angel isn't much of a shooter, and she just can't have the overall impact Caitlin does and will. I'm sorry. I've just gotten so tired of Angel Reese and the other Black Stars playing the race card because of social media. Oh, woe are they. They see so many racist comments on social media, so they say. Okay, so I'll say it again. Newsflash, there are racists out there in the United States of America. Only now, they have a direct line right into your head if you let them. The point is, there is no rule, no law that says you have to read what they write to you about you on social media. You have to choose to read it. And apparently, lots of WNBA stars do choose to go right into their comment section I've seen they're looking for hero worship, for ego boosting. And oh my God, some nameless, faceless person out there called me the N-word or questioned my sexual preference. But here's what I just can't know. Did 3 people call you names? Or was it 300? Or I don't know, 300,000? I don't have any way to judge, to put into perspective, because I just don't know how many. I do know how many times back in the days I used to read what people were saying about me on Twitter, that I'd read, I don't know, 3 negative comments, and I'd tell somebody in my inner circle, man, everybody on Twitter's after me. I'm sorry, but just like so many male stars, too many WNBA stars have let themselves become prisoners of and victims of social media. They're falling into the trap of letting social media define them. For every racist comment they read, I wonder how many comments they read from black fans saying something like, don't let the white media promote that white bitch into taking over our game. Social media is threatening to destroy the WNBA. So now I have to read this excruciatingly embarrassing statement the WNBA Players Association released about and unleashed upon USA Today columnist Christine Brennan. Yes, I know Christine, but I definitely wouldn't say we're friends. But I definitely do respect her as a journalist because she has earned that respect for many years. Christine is writing a book on Caitlin Clark's impact on women's sports. But believe me, Christine Brennan is as tough as they come, male or female. She will not sell out to Caitlin Clark or overprotect or overdefend Caitlin Clark. So Christine was at game 1 of the Fever Sun series. Dejanay Carrington caught Caitlin just below the eye, attempting to block her, I guess try to bother her shot. Dejanay has done a sensational job of guarding and hounding and bothering Caitlin Clark all season long. That's one reason she won Most Improved Player. But on the play in question, it did look like to me she extended her follow-through just a bit with a late snap of the wrist. It's very difficult to judge intent, but it could have been intentional. Could have been. So after this play, of course, blew up on the internet, on social media, 2 days passed, and Christine Brennan, still there at the series, asked Dejanay if making contact with Caitlin's face was at all intentional. Dejanay said no, she didn't even know she had hit Caitlin, and that's not the type of player she is in the first place. Then Christine said that later in the game, she saw Dejanay and teammate Marina Mabry, by the way, is white, saw them laughing about something. Was it about blacking Caitlin Clark's eye? And Dejanay told Christine Brennan, no, I just told you I didn't even know I hit her. Okay, cool. Christine Brennan has asked similar, tough, but legitimate questions to hundreds and hundreds of male players and coaches and executives. She was all over the people that run Augusta National, the golf club, the Masters, for not having a black member and not having a female member. So in this case, Christine Brennan just wanted Dejanay's side of the story, and she got 2 perfectly legitimate responses from Dejanay Carrington. End of story. Christine could go write her story with both sides of the story. So I thought. But no, the social media prisoners and victims in the WNBA fueled a Players Association statement saying Christine Brennan no longer deserves her WNBA credentials. The statement said Christine is, quote unquote, not fooling anyone, and that her line of questioning was, quote, a blatant attempt to bait a professional athlete into participating in a narrative that is false and designed to fuel racist, homophobic, misogynist vitriol on social media. What? So what? Christine Brennan is trying to provoke Trump supporters into leaving nasty, ugly messages on Black Star's social media sites? Is that supposed to be her agenda? No, that is embarrassingly laughable. Here, the WNBA is on the verge of becoming a major league, and its stars are acting so minor league. Wait, did I miss the part where WNBA stars are now required to scroll through all their comments and all their mentions? 12 years ago, I got so many death threats. I was so often called an in-lover on Twitter. I swore off reading any of my comments, any of my mentions, and haven't one time since. I broke my addiction. I have no idea what people say about me, but I'll bet a whole lot of it is nasty and ugly, and I choose not to read it. Seriously, a big part of me wants to choose not to watch the WNBA anymore. The whole league is starting to feel nasty and ugly to me. The obvious irony is that this league has had a number of white stars, but there's just something about this straight white girl from Iowa who's become some kind of right-wing symbol, even though she did like Taylor Swift's post endorsing Kamala Harris. But somehow it's just starting to feel to me like this runs deeper than right-wing vitriol on Black Star's social media. This is starting to feel like runaway resentment, sometimes racially charged resentment, paranoid resentment of a white girl who's getting so much credit, too much in their eyes, for making the minor league WNBA a major TV league, and that this white girl is becoming too big a threat because she obviously has the rare ability and the basketball genius to soon back up the hype by becoming the WNBA's best player. Those words just came from a white guy who almost certainly has criticized Caitlin Clark more than any other white commentator. This is from YouTube. @Quan Solo says, it's almost to the point where Eagles' loss is the Cowboys' win and vice versa. Quan Solo, that is true. Yet, while we play the who can look worse game with the Eagles, maybe we're ignoring the object in our rearview mirror that looks closer than it is because it's right on top of us both. I'll say it again. Jayden Daniels is going to start making an MVP case because the revitalized Commanders are going to keep winning games. I believe they will beat the Browns and the Panthers and the Bears and the Giants and the Steelers to get to 8-2 going to Philadelphia. Even if they lose that game, I believe the Commanders will beat my Cowboys in Washington just before Thanksgiving to get to 9-3, and I can see them beating the Titans, the Eagles, and the Falcons all in Washington to get to 12-5. This team has breakthrough written all over it. Now, I did pick the Eagles to win the Super Bowl, but obviously I couldn't predict they'd be down their top 3 wide receivers and stink it up at Tampa. I also did not see Jayden Daniels coming, not like this. But I did say Dan Quinn was a great hire. Loved him when he was in Dallas. Wish he were my head coach in Dallas. I did say that Josh Harris will prove to be a very good owner as opposed to the last guy. I've applauded every move the Commanders have made, yet I'll say this. I'm not writing off the Eagles if they can get and stay healthy. I've already written off my Cowboys, who will lose at Pittsburgh 27-24. So now a quick question from Brandon Long, who asked via email, scale of 1 to 10, how scared are you of the Commanders as a Cowboy fan? Brandon, I'm a 10. J. Mac McCarthy from Philadelphia asks, do you think LeBron will take this season serious, or would he use the attention of him and Bronny playing together as a cop-out and just try to have fun instead of pursuing another ring? J-Mac, no way is LeBron James going to giggle through one final season playfully trash-talking with his son as they team up in the backcourt for a team, the Los Angeles Lakers team, that misses the playoffs. No way he's going to do that. No. I believe LeBron believes the Lakers can make a run at the finals, just as they did 2 years ago, because he thinks Bronny and Dalton Connect will make them a little better. And because he hopes Gabe Vincent, and Jared Vanderbilt, and Christian Wood, and Cam Reddish will be healthier than they were last year when they just all stayed hurt. If those four stay healthy for, 80, 90% of the season, and LeBron and AD and Rui and Austin Reeves and D'Lo stay reasonably healthy, you bet this team will contend. LeBron looked 39 going on 25 at the Olympics, and AD was dominant on both ends of the court. So no reason to believe we'll see any fall off the cliff from LeBron as he turns 40 on December 30th. And man, AD did show us something last season. He stayed healthy for 76 of 82 games. But now we get to the bottom line. The key to this season for the Los Angeles Lakers, and for that matter for the NBA, is LeBron's oldest son, who will turn 20 this Sunday. Bronny's honeymoon is over. It lasted one glorious day. It's called Media Day. Lots of memorable pictures of him and his dad in Laker uniforms, numbers 9 and 23. Lots of funny trash talk between those two about hotly disputed moments in recent Laker pickup games. I enjoyed it, but now it starts. Now it gets scary real. The first of 6 Lakers preseason games is Friday night. And the question lurking in the subconscious of even the most devout and devoted LeBron fans is this question: can Bronny actually play in the NBA? Remember what LeBron said last season? Bronny's better than a lot of the cats he sees playing around the NBA on League Pass. Well, then we got to see Bronny play in the Summer League. And the truth so many of us did not want to verbalize was, Summer League Bronny didn't even look like he belonged in the G League, or for that matter, in the Summer League. Bronny's only a little over 6 feet 1 inches tall. He does have trouble creating his own shot. He isn't a great passer. The three-point shooting that was pretty awful at USC pretty much stayed that way in the Summer League. Too often, Bronny just stood around and disappeared on offense. And then the kid who's supposed to be such a fierce on-ball defender too often got blown by in Summer League games. I was pretty much horrified watching Bronny play in Summer League. But I clung to my early opinion. Playing alongside his father on the Lakers will bring out the very best in Bronny James. Bronny will rise to the highest level of competition because that's what he was born and raised to do. The brightest lights will not scare Bronny James. They'll inspire him. He's lived his entire life in the brightest spotlight as LeBron James Jr. I've said from the start, I have loved the way this kid has handled it all with poise and humility. Nothing has seemed to rattle or bother him. Bronny comes across as a good kid, raised right, with a strong backbone, extreme mental toughness. Remember late in the McDonald's game? This is 2 years ago. Bronny readily took and drained big threes, late threes, led me to believe he was the one in the family born with the clutch gene. Then he had that scary heart issue at USC, which pretty much derailed that season. Then Rich Paul made it clear to the rest of the NBA nobody had better draft Bronny, which left him for the Lakers in the second round and left a lot of us wondering, would anyone else have actually taken Bronny earlier? I think so, but I can't be sure. But I do believe Bronny was born to play alongside his father. Bronny's game perfectly complements LeBron's. LeBron needs a running mate who knows how to play. Check. LeBron needs an off guard who can catch and shoot and make wide open threes under big stage pressure. Check. LeBron needs a backcourt co-star who doesn't care about being a star, who has no ego, who just doesn't need the basketball. Check. And finally, LeBron definitely needs a second guard who will play lockdown perimeter defense on the other team's best shooter / scorer so that LeBron doesn't have to. Check. I think. Yet, what if Bronny, I hate to even let these words leak out into the universe, what if Bronny just can't play? LeBron does not want LeBron James Jr. yo-yoing back and forth, up and down and up to the G League, to the South Bay Lakers, South Bay Lakers. Nope. LeBron wants his namesake son to contribute, 10, 12, 15 minutes a night to what might be LeBron's last season. Yet, what if Bronny just can't play? What if he's taking minutes from D'Lo or Austin Reeves or Christie or Vincent or Vanderbilt? And let's just say by Christmas, they're all privately saying to that new rookie coach, J.J. Redick, come on, man, this is ridiculous. Now we start finding out. This will be the NBA's most fascinating story times 10. If, for whatever reason, LeBron's son just can't cut it, I definitely will not blame Bronny. He did not draft himself. I will blame his father for being an all too typical father and loving his son to a fault without perspective. Speaking of Vanderbilt, the Laker player, that also happens to be the university I attended. And for the many of you who don't know this, aren't aware of this, we do field a football team. And believe it or not, that team does play in the biggest, baddest football conference in the land, an NFL pipeline of a conference called the SEC. Now, Vandy grads almost certainly work in the SEC. I'm talking about the Securities and Exchange Commission. But I'm also pretty sure we play in the Southeastern Conference. At least that's what Nick Saban said 2 weeks ago. Saban said the only place coaches don't fear playing in the SEC is at my school, Vanderbilt. That's because these football factory schools with so many fans whose entire lives revolve around the college football team will inevitably have more fans at Vanderbilt than we will have. Hey, some of our students actually study on Saturdays. And of course, Nashville is a destination city, the best city in the SEC. So sure, Alabama fans have planned their vacations around a week in Nashville. Or maybe this time, many of those fans had to postpone their trip to Nashville for at least a couple of days because they were just too hungover after Alabama beat Georgia in that 41-34 barn burner last Saturday night in Tuscaloosa. So yes, this Saturday, my Vanderbilt Commodores have to play and play host to the number one ranked team in the land, the Alabama Crimson Tide, in their home away from home, what's now called our First Bank Stadium. Alabama is a 25-point favorite, which is why Alabama coaches left mouse traps in the lockers of their players to remind them this could be the ultimate trap game. Somewhere, former Coach Saban has to be belly laughing at that. Wait, Vanderbilt, a trap game? More like trap shooting, as in shooting clay pigeons. That's all we are, clay pigeons. Pull! I mean, we lost to Georgia State. Not Georgia, Georgia State, which then lost to Georgia Southern. So there is no way I'm going to mention we did somehow beat Virginia Tech, which did get robbed the other night in Miami. No way I'm going to mention we did take 7th-ranked Missouri to double overtime at Missouri. There is absolutely no way I'm going to mention that at home, Alabama gave up 519 yards to a Georgia whose quarterback Carson Beck threw what should have been 5 or 6 more interceptions. Speaking of quarterbacks, now keep this to yourself, but we, as in Vanderbilt, we do have this transfer named Diego Pavia, who played a whole lot of football at New Mexico Military and then at New Mexico State, and who just knows how to play quarterback, just knows how to make plays with his arm and his legs, just knows how to win. No, forget I said any of that. Alabama 55, Clay Pigeons 0. Most of our students won't even know the game is being played. They'll be at the library. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks to Tyler Korn for producing, to Ernestine for overseeing, and to Hazel for approving.